and welcome to my little bookish corner of the internet. My name's Harriet. Today I'm going to be talking through my worst or most disappointing books from 2021. There is no order to this, and I didn't count out how many I was putting on this list. It's just the ones that disappointed me the most, and there happens to be 7 of them. So 7 out of the 87 books that I've read so far is not that bad, but some of these made me extremely angry and very disappointed, so I definitely want to talk through them with you now. As I say, there's not really an order to this, but I've gone through my Goodreads from kind of the bottom up, so it'll be the ones that I've read in order. So the first one that disappointed me, unfortunately, was Daisy Jones and the Six by Taylor Jenkins Reid. Now, this was a 3-star, apparently, according to my Goodreads. I would probably lower it to a 2.5 because I am never going to pick this up again. It really did disappoint me. I know a lot of people love this book. So if you didn't know the storyline, we are following this made-up band that everyone is saying obviously feels very genuine and like they existed. And it covers all of the drama that happened between them and the reason why they split up and the relationships between the people within the band. It's supposed to be quite reminiscent of Fleetwood Mac and their story. Obviously there's things about Fleetwood Mac that we don't know, things that they keep to themselves, which rightly so, they are literally just people. It's none of our business. But yeah, this book is very kind of gossipy. So this was the second Taylor Jenkins Reid book that I had read. So the first one I read was The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, which if I had read it this year, it would have been my favourites list because it is one of the best books I've ever read. I loved it so much, but I did read it in 2020. So yeah, I took a little break from that and then came back to it, and this was the second book that I read by this author. And I just was very disappointed. So a lot of people had a really good time with it and were saying how amazing it was and how great the characters were. But for me, I thought the characters were all really bad. I don't mind reading about bad characters with bad morals and things like that, but yeah, for me, I didn't want to read about these people because there was nothing to like about them at all. So sometimes with writing, you can write a morally grey character or a bad character in terms of kind of the actions that they partake in, things they say. So that can be a bad character, but if it's not written well, then you're absolutely gonna hate them. If it's written well, there'll be things that you do end up liking about that person. You can understand why they are the way they are. Personally, for me in this story, I didn't really understand why the characters were like this. There was a lot of talk about substance abuse, which I know does obviously change a person, but that doesn't automatically make them a really horrible and bad person, and that's kind of how it came across to me anyway. But yeah, I read this as a physical book, and I have heard that the audiobook is a little bit better because it's told in an interview style format, which is really one of the only things that I enjoyed about this book. But for me, it was also a little bit of a downfall for the novel because you cannot really get into that person's head and you don't get a lot of descriptions about anything. It's all just told from perspective and told through the character speaking. So yeah, I would unfortunately lower it to a 2.5 star, which kind of sucks. But for me, it just didn't hit the mark and I absolutely did not love it. And then we get on to a particular book that I've spoken about quite a lot on my channel, and it's something that really irks me because I know a lot of people read this author's works, which is fine, but I got told that they were really good, and then I read this book, or these 2 books, and I was disgusted. So that is 1Q84 by Haruki Murakami. I did actually have a collection of the 3 books. I put it down just before the end of the second one because I just couldn't do it to myself. So this is a very strange story. We're following 2 main characters, and one of them realises that there are 2 moons in the sky, and they're thinking to themselves, has there always been 2 moons in the sky? Which sounds a little bit weird, right? A little bit dystopian. So you have that going on, and they also are like a trained assassin, so they do kill people. They go for people that partake in sexual assault, which is kind of cool. I did enjoy that. And then our other character is a writer, and he meets up with this girl that has a story, and the girl keeps saying that the story is real, and he won't believe her, so he publishes the story, and then things start to happen. So there's a lot of like weird, crazy shit going on basically, which is fine, I can deal with that. But there was also a lot of really, how do I word this? Just the way that Murakami wrote his women was gross. It doesn't usually bother me too much. I know everyone sees people in different ways, but for me, when every female character that you introduce is introduced by the size of her boobs, or how attractive she is, or how many partners she's had, that just doesn't interest me. I'm not interested in it. Oh, I've got like a little gap of sun there. I'm really sorry, that's going to be really annoying. Yeah, it was just disgusting. I don't want to read it. And then our male character was just a dick, and he also was sexually attracted to a minor, which is gross. There's also a lot of talk about paedophilia in this book. That's kind of one of the main things that goes on. And for me, I couldn't read it. It's not for me. It makes me very uncomfortable talking about it, so I'm sorry if I'm kind of looking around everywhere apart from the camera. But yeah, I don't really get how anyone can like this book. If you do, that's fine, but no. I don't think I'm going to be reading any Murakami for quite a while, to be honest. I have been recommended some books by him actually, but a lot of people have said that his female characters are very similar in all of the books, so I don't know if I'll bother. That on my Goodreads is a 2-star. So for me, it started off quite good and then it kind of got worse as it went on. I think if I'd have stopped after the first book, I would have been all right. The second book is the one where things kind of got really gross and really disturbing. There were certain elements that I liked. So the main female character, aside from all the boob talk, was actually pretty cool. Yeah, that's kind of like the only thing that I liked. I was maybe being kind of generous with my rating. It probably would be a 1-star. Speaking of gross paedophilia books, we get on to Lolita by Vladimir Nabokov. Now, funnily enough, I am not really going to mention about the paedophilia element because I knew that going in. The reason why I read this book is because I read My Dark Vanessa, and Lolita is obviously referenced a lot through that. So I knew what I was getting myself into, and what was quite nice about this book is that it isn't as graphic. Whereas My Dark Vanessa is quite intense and quite graphic, Lolita's not like that, and the writing within it is actually very beautiful. I was just disappointed. I kind of expected a bit more from it. I expected more of kind of a moral story from it, or I don't know, more character development. I don't know why, but it kind of disappointed me. I just found it like a little bit dull. But if you don't know the story behind this, so we are following a young girl called Lolita, and we are following a man called Humbert, which I don't believe is his real name. I think it's an alias. But he falls in love with this underage girl, and it's their story spanning across many years, and the disgusting and manipulative things that he does to get this girl to kind of be around him, and the sort of relationship that they have with each other. It is interesting in some ways, but I do think that it is just a little bit dull for my liking. However, the way that it's written is super poetic and very beautiful, so that's something that really did draw me in with this book and kind of kept me going. But the story itself, it just wasn't for me, I don't think. But I did end up giving it a 3-star rating, which I stand by. I think that if it's something that you want to read because you've read My Dark Vanessa, or if you want to read it before you read that book, or it's just something that you, I don't know, find interesting, then I do think it is a very well written book. It's just a little bit slow. Oh god, okay, now we get onto a book that everyone talks about. I want to say before I mention this book that I haven't seen the film. I've heard the film is a little bit better than the book, so we'll just leave that out there. But that is Call Me By Your Name by Andre Ackerman. This story follows a young boy? I can't remember how old he is. I think he's 17. And he goes on holiday with his parents to their kind of holiday home and falls in love with a man that comes to stay with them. And it's about their communication with each other and the relationship that they have. There's a lot of kind of sexual tension, things like that. I don't know what I was expecting from this book. I actually thought it was going to be like a little bit more romantic, I suppose. But for me, I found the relationship to be really toxic, and their communication and relationship with each other just seemed really off. It didn't feel like anyone would talk to someone like that. It was a bit strange. I just couldn't connect with the characters. I did like the descriptions of the landscapes and the places that they visited, but for me, the characters just weren't there. They weren't people that I was very interested in, and I didn't really care about what happened. There's also some really gross kind of analogies used throughout the story. So for example, there's the one scene with the peach. If you've seen the film or you've read the book, you know exactly what I'm going to talk about. But yeah, there's a scene with the peach, and the peach is described as a rape victim because it is bruised and left on the side. So yeah, that kind of bumped the rating down a little bit. I rated this a 3-star on Goodreads. I would take that down to a 2.5 now, I think. But yeah, I just was left feeling a little bit disappointed because so many people had said that it was a really good and really beautiful book, and I just didn't find that. Oh gosh, another book that was super hyped as well, and I do kind of understand why this one is hyped. I do get it, but it wasn't for me, and that is The Gilded Ones by Namina Forna. This is a YA fantasy novel that is going to be part of a series, I believe. I don't know how many books there are going to be, but we're following our main character, and she's living in this world where when girls come of age, they are cut, and if they bleed gold, they are seen as demons. If they bleed red, they're fine, they can go about their day. And if they do get found out as being a demon, then they are killed in ways that are absolutely horrific, because every one of them is very hard to kill, and they have kind of like a specific weakness, like an Achilles heel. So the people that are torturing them have to go through so many different layers of torture to figure out how to kill them, because they are very quick healing. So yeah, we're following our main character when it's found out that she is a demon and what happens to her and the adventure that she goes on. Now, I quite liked the idea behind this story, but for me, I don't read a lot of YA fantasy or YA books at all anymore. It's either like children's literature or nostalgic YA. So I think it's just not for me. It's just not a book that I should have read, basically, but I thought I'd give it a go. It was just very tropey. There were a lot of things in here that were very typical for YA. So things like enemies to lovers, which if you like that, you're gonna absolutely love this. There was a lot of kind of backstabbing and plot twists everywhere, but the plot twists, I kind of expected them. It was, I don't know, it just didn't surprise me. It just disappointed me. So it ended up being a 2-star rating, which I stand by. Like I say, I kind of like the idea behind it all and the world, but it's not the series that I'm going to continue with. And then we get on to a book that I do not know how I finished it. I buddy read this with Rachel over at Rachel's Reading Nook, and I think if we weren't buddy reading it, I would have put it down after like 100 pages because it was so boring. It was so boring. That is Mansfield Park by Jane Austen. This has quite high ratings on Goodreads, and I do not understand why, because I've read quite a lot of Austen's works and I adore them, but this one I really didn't like it. So I can hardly even remember the story. We are following a young girl and she gets taken in by her aunt and uncle, I believe, who are of like a higher stature, and they want to bring her up to be a nice young lady so she can get married and be nice and wealthy. And it follows her and her relationship with that family and kind of what happens. There's a romance in there which I didn't enjoy at all. I saw it coming from the beginning. I hoped it didn't happen. And you know, with Austen's books, there's usually like a slow burning romance and there's lots of kind of yearning, and it's usually from both sides. This felt like our main character fell in love with this person, has been in love with them for years and years, and then suddenly, right at the end, the guy that she's in love with decides to love her back. It's so weird. I wasn't connected to any of the characters. I felt that the pacing was very slow. It was just very dull. The only reason why this got a 2.5 is because it was fun to moan about. I know that sounds ridiculous, but me and Rachel were just moaning about the book the whole time, but it was very fun to do that. So I think if you're going to read this, definitely do it as a buddy read because it makes the experience so much easier and so much more entertaining. But yeah, this is easily the worst Austen that I've read yet. I'm hoping all the others that I read will be good. So the ones that I've read so far are Emma, Pride and Prejudice, Persuasion, and obviously Mansfield Park. So I've got a couple more to read. I think my next one will maybe be Sense and Sensibility, which I do have high hopes for. And then the last book on this list is actually one of the only ones that I've DNF'd this year. The only other one that I didn't finish was 1Q84 Part 2. So that was maybe like 50 pages away from the end. And I don't usually put down a book after that, but I felt like I was going to be sick. So I put that down. But Silence of the Girls, I DNF'd after maybe like 75, 100 pages. This is a historical fiction following, I think her name is Briseis, and she's taken in by the Trojans as a prisoner, I think. Now this is one of those books that loads of people have spoken about before and said how amazing it is, said how incredible the characters are. For me, I didn't connect with any of the characters because I was kind of taken out of the story, and that's just because there's a lot of kind of modernized speech in there and language used that personally I didn't feel like suited the kind of tone and the time of the book. Now I know some people have said that our main character, who's a royal, actually would have been more like one of the people, and has said that they would speak like that. I didn't know that before I went into this book, so for me it just felt very clunky, like the speech felt clunky and the language used throughout the story felt clunky, and I just couldn't connect with it. And I mean, time is very short. If you're not enjoying a book, you should definitely just be able to put it down if you don't like it. I don't want to sit here and kind of bitch and moan about the book too much, but it just wasn't for me and I didn't enjoy it, so I did put it down. So that's one of the ones that really disappointed me this year, which is such a shame. I did have really high hopes for it. But after that I did read Circe, which is like a similar kind of vibe, And I did enjoy that, but I didn't love it. So I think maybe historical fiction just isn't for me. So yeah, we've learned quite a lot this year. We've learned that I don't like historical fiction and that I don't really like YA books. So I can take that into the new year and kind of think about what books I'm picking up more, because I think last year it was too easy to just pop into Tesco when lockdown was happening, go and get your groceries and then just pick up like a random book because you wanted to feel good about yourself. So I'm trying not to do that anymore and trying to kind of tailor what I'm reading a bit more to what I know I'm going to enjoy. Sometimes I will surprise myself and pick up a book that I wouldn't usually go for, but I know now what I'm definitely going to enjoy or what I'm going to most likely have a good time with. So yeah, it's been a learning curve. This is kind of the main year that I started reading many more books. So there were always going to be some that I didn't enjoy or some that I enjoyed less than others. But yeah, let me know your worst book from the year and let me know the most disappointing book as well. I will leave a link down below to my best books from 2021 so you can check that out. But that is it from me today. Thank you so much for watching and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.